Hello learners, on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, we welcome you for this video lecture session. Today's topic is environmental aspects of energy use. This is 34th module of the course Thermodynamics and its application. I am Shubhashish Maji, professor in Mechanical Engineering from School of Engineering and Technology of Indira Gandhi National Open University. So, dear learners, let us start with the discussion on environmental aspects of energy use. After listening to this video lecture, you will be able to understand the environmental aspects of energy use and you will be able to explain the need for an integrated approach to energy management. The principal causes for ecological degradation in the industrialized countries, particularly during the post-World War II, are drastic changes in the technology of agricultural and industrial production and transportation, made possible by the availability of cheap energy, especially cheap oil. In most cases, the new, more polluting technologies have also been more energy efficient than those they replaced, but were more profitable because they used cheap energy. The ecological crisis has been blamed on different things by different groups in the West. Exploiting population, particularly in the underdeveloped countries. Affluence and wastefulness, particularly in the developed countries. Profits, man's innate aggressive technology, etc. In order to survive on the earth, human beings require the stable, continuing existence of an appropriate environment which encompasses a thin skin of air, water and soil. Barry Commoner has enunciated 4 laws on ecology that highlighted the scope of this science of planetary housekeeping. First law: everything is connected to everything else. The ecosystem consists of multiple interconnected parts which interact with each other. The feedback characteristics of ecosystems result in amplification and intensification of several processes. Second law: everything must go somewhere. In nature, there is no such thing as waste. In every natural system, what is excreted by one organism as waste is taken up as food by another. Nothing can be expected to go away. Third law: nature knows best. Modern technology aims to improve on nature. This law holds, however, that any major man-made change in a natural system is likely to be detrimental to that system. Fourth law: there is no such thing as a free lunch. In ecology, as in economics, this law is intended to warn that every gain is owned at some cost. In a way, this law embodies the previous 3 laws. Because the global system is a connected whole, anything extracted from it by human effort must be paid for. Payment of the price cannot be avoided, it can only be delayed. In order to achieve the desired energy savings, we need at least 4 classes of inputs. Science and technology inputs such as from thermodynamics, waste reduction techniques, end-use matching strategies, environmental impact assessment, materials technology, town planning, architecture, etc. Management inputs such as commitment of top management, total quality management, productivity enhancement strategies, participatory management, training, continuing education, maintenance management, etc. Policy input such as those determining subsidies, incentives, energy pricing, labor cooperation, work ethic, strategic planning, etc. Sociological input which determine the standard of living, quality of life, concern for prosperity, equity, sociological preservation, etc. We need an integrated approach, integrating, for example, consideration of energy and environment, conservation of energy and materials, recycling and reuse of energy and materials, technology and management, education and training, defense versus development, population containment versus lifestyle adjustment, energy and economics, etc. Now let us talk about fossil fuel combustion process, because this is the major issue and this creates the pollution, the environment. So, in order to save our environment, we must see that there should not be any pollutant gases comes out due to the combustion of fuel in different energy processing process. It is pertinent to quote one of the principal conclusions of the 1989 World Energy Conference in Montreal. Fossil fuels will continue to meet most of the world's growing energy demand. We should therefore be committed to using them more rationally. This requires a thorough understanding of combustion phenomena, meticulous design of combustion devices, and fine-tuned operation of the combustion equipment. Now, you know very well that if we use thermal power plant for producing electricity, but you all know that in boiler generally we use coal as a fuel. Now, when coal is burned for producing heat, for converting water into high pressure, high temperature steam in the boiler, but at the same time there are several pollutant gas comes out along with the flue gas, and those gases are very much harmful for human beings, like sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and other gases comes out along with the flue gases. One of the greatest opportunities for industrial fuel conservation is providing by improved combustion efficiency of the fuel burning equipment in energy systems such as boilers, process heaters, kilns, dryers, incinerations, steam generators, etc. The most important factor in optimizing combustion is to ensure that the proper mixture of fuel and air is supplied to the combustion process. While theoretically ideal, stoichiometric combustion should occur when the chemically correct oxygen is supplied to the combustion process. The following fundamental considerations contribute to incomplete combustion. The full value of the heat of combustion is not realized in actual practice for two reasons. The latent heat of vaporization of the water formed by combustion is not available. Dissociation becomes important at temperature above 1650 degrees centigrade. In as much as the heating value of hydrogen is 1,20,000 kilojoule per kg, while that of carbon is 32,000 kilojoule per kg, the greater the proportion of hydrogen in the fuel, the higher its heating value. However, from practical consideration, the fuel-air ratio is more important than the above factors. Under favorable lean mixture conditions, practically all the thermal energy ideally available from combustion can be obtained. If the fuel-air ratio is richer than stoichiometric, the fuel cannot be burned completely. The temperature after combustion depends primarily on the inlet air temperature and the amount of thermal energy released per unit mass of mixture, which is principally a function of the fuel-air ratio. The combustion temperature falls off about half as rapidly with an increase in fuel-air ratio above the stoichiometric value as does the heating value of fuel because of the greater amount of fuel present per unit mass of air. Gas turbine and combustion engines are characterized by high combustion temperature resulting from the air compression prior to combustion. Now let us discuss about waste heat recovery. In short form, we call it WHR and its utilization. Waste heat includes industrial process waste steam, thermal power plant reject heat and heat from burning of crop residue, agriculture waste, animal dung, etc. The properties of the various types of waste heat and recovery methods are quite different. Approximately 2/3 of industrial energy is used as process steam and heat and is in the form of thermal energy rather than in the form of power. Consequently, the opportunities for waste heat recovery are plentiful. However, in establishing the opportunities, process energy requirement and waste stream need to be evaluated. The available technology of recovery and their cost and the resulting energy saving determine the economic viability of realizing the waste heat potential. Now, let us see what is the definition of waste heat. Waste heat is defined as heat rejected from a process at a temperature sufficiently above the ambient temperature to permit the extraction of additional value from it. Sources of temperature range of waste heat, the temperature levels and the location of the waste heat stream relative to the user's need are significant in WHR, that is waste heat recovery. Three temperature regions are commonly used to classify waste heat. High temperature waste heat above 650 degrees centigrade. The maximum theoretical temperature for combustion is about 2000 degrees centigrade and most practical combustors are operated under 1650 degrees centigrade. Most of the waste heat in this temperature range results from direct fuel fired process. It should be used to perform work by means of gas or steam turbines before utilization as waste heat. Medium temperature waste heat, that is from temperature 250 degrees centigrade to 650 degrees centigrade. Most of the waste heat in this temperature range comes from the exhaust of directly fired process units. The waste heat is not hot enough to permit extraction of mechanical work by steam or gas turbines. Low temperature waste heat that is below 250 degrees centigrade. In this temperature range, it is usually not practical to extract work from the waste heat resource. It may be used for preheating. Industries having the most potential for waste heat recovery. The following 8 industries are commonly believed to have the most potential for waste heat recovery: petroleum refining, steel industries, aluminum industries, paper industries, olefins and derivatives industries, textile industries, cement industries and glass manufacturing industries. There are 2 fundamental types of cogeneration for in-plant power generation system, that is topping and bottoming cycle, differentiated on the basis of whether electrical or thermal energy is produced first. Now, the cogeneration concept is one of the most widely used waste heat recovery process. We discussed about the topping cycle and bottoming cycle for the cogeneration concept. In topping cycle, fuel is burned to produce high temperature heat, which is utilized in a turbine to generate electrical or mechanical power. After passing through the turbine, the reject heat is then used in industrial applications as process heat. On the other hand, in a bottoming cycle system, fuel is burned initially to produce process heat, with the reject heats used to generate either electrical or mechanical power. Particularly in large organizations and those using significant amounts of various forms of energy, the energy manager, combining technological and managerial expertise, has an important role to play in controlling energy costs. His position should confer authority and respectability, and he should report direct to a senior executive. He should have free access to all information on energy matters. The major function and duties of an energy manager are to generate and sustain interest in energy management, to disseminate information on energy conservation opportunities and strategies, to deliver lectures to different groups of employees on energy management, highlighting the success stories, to maintain an up-to-date information based on energy purchases, stocks and consumption. What are the issues in thermal power plant? Nowadays, you know very well that 55% of the power generation has been carried out through the thermal power plant, where coal is being used as a fuel in the boiler. The thermal power plants are increasingly facing lower capacity utilizations. For more than 1/3 of India's total thermal power capacity is currently stranded, and the rest is running at 55% utilization. This creates problems to lenders of these thermal projects, mainly state-owned banks, since lower capacity utilization translates to failing recoveries. Longer construction period for thermal plants, that is around 3 to 4 years, compared to renewable sources of power that takes about 12 to 14 months for the construction, is another important aspect. And of course, there is lack of upgrading technology for improving the efficiency of thermal power plants. Now let us see how alternate energy sources or the renewable energy sources can take the lead for producing power generations, at the same time to reduce the pollutions, to safeguard our environmental conditions. Wind power generation capacity in India has significantly increased in recent years. As of 29 February 2020, the total installed wind power capacity was 37.6 664 gigawatt, the fourth largest installed wind power capacity in the world. Wind power capacity is mainly spread across the southern, western and northern region. Wind power cost in India are decreases rapidly. The levelized tariff of wind power reached a record low of rupees 2.43 per kilowatt hour without any direct and indirect subsidies during auctions for wind projects in December 2017. In 1986, the first wind power is set up at Ratnagiri in Maharashtra, Okha in Gujarat and Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. With the swift development of wind power in India, at present India is the fourth largest wind power installations country in the world. With the total capacity of 7,455.2 megawatt, Tamil Nadu is the largest producer of wind energy, followed by Maharashtra, Gujarat and Rajasthan. Now let us discuss about the environmental issues of hydroelectric plants. However, during the 20th century, the construction of large dams have led to the displacement of many millions of people from their homes, and dam failures have killed many thousands across different locations in the world. We will consider this and other deleterious effects under three headings: hydrological effects, water flows, groundwater, water supply, irrigation, etc. Other physical effects of large hydro plants, and also we will touch on the social effects. Let us first talk about the environment considerations on the hydroelectric plants. In operation, it releases no carbon dioxide and oxides of sulfur and nitrogen. It produces no particulates or chemical compounds such as dioxins that are directly harmful to human health. It emits no radioactivity. Dams may collapse, but they will not cause major fires. Hydrological effects. Diverting a river into a canal or a mountain stream into a pipe may not greatly change the total flow, but it can have a marked effect on the environment. Other physical effects like dam failures, plant failures, silt, fish and methane gases, these are definitely an important issues while discussing the safeguard of our environment. Now, social effects. Let us discuss the social effects with very nice story from child's book on energy. It says that the story begins like they built a dam and make a lake in the place where Sasank lived. Sasank and his family had to leave the farm. His grandfather had also lived there. Shashank was born in that place. He was sad to go. So this is one of the most important aspects on social effects due to the construction of a large hydroelectric plants. Example of social effects: the Aswan Dam at Egypt and Kariva Dam at border between Zambia and Zimbabwe involved the relocation of some 80,000 and 60,000 people respectively, whilst the rising water behind the Three Gorges Dam at China submerged about 100 towns and displaced over million people. And we all know that the largest hydroelectric plant is located at China. The name of that hydroelectric plant is Three Gorges Dam. There are some advantages on environmental aspects for hydroelectric plant. Produces no atmospheric pollution, neither consumes nor pollutes the water it uses for electricity generation. produce no waste, avoid depleting non-renewable fuel sources, very few greenhouse gases emissions relative to other large-scale energy options. It can create new freshwater ecosystems with increased productivity. Now let us discuss about the disadvantages on hydroelectric plant. Inundation of terrestrial habitat, modification of hydrological regimes, modification of aquatic habitat, water quality needs to be monitored, managed, sediment composition and transport may need to be monitored, managed. Greenhouse gas emission can arise under certain conditions in tropical reservoirs, barriers for fish migrants, fish entrainment. This is also one of the main issues for hydroelectric plant. All energy sources have some impact on environment. Fossil fuel cost, oil and natural gas do substantially more harm than renewable energy sources. There is air pollution, water pollution, damage to public health, wildlife and habitat loss due to the use of fossil fuel. However, renewable sources may also have environmental impacts, some of which are significant, such as wind, solar, geothermal, biomass and hydropower. The environmental impacts associated with solar power can include land use and habitat loss, water use and the use of hazardous materials in manufacturing, though the type of impacts vary greatly depending on the types of technology used. Wind power. We can generate electricity with wind power with less toxic pollution or global warming emissions, but it does have some environmental impacts. It includes land use and challenges the wildlife and habitat. It is also abundant, inexhaustible, that's why it can be favorable energy source in comparison to fossil fuel. Some state governments are exploring means to address land availability through innovation. For example, they are exploring means to deploy solar capacity above their extensive irrigation canal projects, thereby harvesting solar energy while reducing the loss of irrigation water by solar evaporation. The state of Gujarat was first to implement the canal solar power project by using 19,000 km long network of Narmada canals across the state for setting up solar panels to generate electricity. It was the first ever project of its kind in India. Let us talk about the geothermal energy. The geothermal impacts of geothermal energy vary depends on the technology used to generate electricity and the type of cooling system utilized. Biomass power. Biomass is organic matter derived from living or recently living organisms. Conversion of biomass to biofuel can be achieved by different methods which are broadly classified into thermal, chemical and biochemical methods. The manner in which it is developed and harvested significantly affect land use and life cycle, global warming emissions, impact of producing power from biomass. Hydraulic power includes massive hydroelectric dams and small run of the river plants. The largest hydroelectric dam, that is Three Gorges Dam, is located at China. There are several environmental issues with respect to largest hydroelectric plant. In spite of all these environmental impacts, still renewable energy technologies are having less environmental impact than fossil fuel. Now let us discuss a case study that is on environmental issues. So we will discuss the large hydro dam under construction at Ethiopia. We call it Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Case study Egypt-Ethiopia row. The battle between Ethiopia and Egypt, the travel over the giant Nile Dam. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, formerly known as Millennium Dam, is under construction in the Benishangul Gumur region at Ethiopia on the Blue Nile River, which is located about 40 km east of Sudan. The project is owned by Ethiopian Electric Power Corporation. The potential impacts of the dam have been the source of several regional controversy. The location is Benishangul Gumut Purpose Power. Construction began in April 2011 and height is 155 meter, length is 1780 meter. Its construction began in 2011 on the Blue Nile tributary in the northern Ethiopian highlands, from where 85% of the Nile's water flows. However, the megadam has caused a row between Egypt and Ethiopia, with Sudan caught in between, which some fear could lead to war, and the US is now helping to meddle. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, formerly known as the Millennium Dam, it is the Benishangul Gumut region of Ethiopia, about 15 km of border of Sudan. As of October 2016, the work stood at approximately 75% completion. Once completed, the reservoir could take anywhere between 5 to 15 years to fill with water, depending on hydrologic conditions during the filling period and agreement reached between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt. Egypt relies on the Nile for 90% of water. It has historically asserted that having a stable flow of Nile water is a matter of survival in a country where water is scarce. 1929 treaty and a subsequent ones in 1959 gave Egypt and Sudan rights to nearly all of the Nile water, from its headwaters in Ethiopia and the Central African highlands to the downstream region. Superpower Egypt. The Nile flows through 10 nations, but by a work of British colonist history, only Egypt and its neighbor Sudan have any rights to its water. Now, see that we have to safeguard our environment, and there may be some controversy if in some country a large hydroelectric dam construction began, and Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam is one of the best example. They are constructing the dam, and the neighboring countries like Egypt and Sudan are having problems, and now USA is negotiating to settle down these issues in between Egypt and Ethiopia. So let us summarize what we have discussed today. We have discussed the environment aspects of energy use. We have discussed the need for an integrated approach to energy management, and also lastly we discussed a very important case studies on hydroelectric plant construction. Thank you very much.